Welcome to Startup Grind Grand Rapids. This is Startup Grind's funding month in April. We do this every year, and specifically waited towards the end of the month to publish and to have our Startup Grind Grand Rapids talk, because there's so much great content on startupgrind.com, on our YouTube channel, our local channel. Go ahead and check that out because we have hundreds of talks based on fundraising. Very niche topics. We have really great topics on women funding. We have the women's summit that's now live online, so check that out as well. But for here, Startup Grind Grand Rapids, we're really excited to be speaking with Mani here. He has a new startup that's specifically helping people helping connect founders with investors. So Mani, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Corey. Thank you for inviting me.
And Mani, you've found Startup Grind. You've been in the Startup Grind ecosystem for a little bit. Just real quick before we get into your background, how did you find Startup Grind?
So I got to know about Startup Grind first because I wanted to apply to some of the good incubators and accelerators and so on. Because intro is all about working with the investors and entrepreneurs, and Startup Grind has one of the biggest network of startups across the world. So that is when I wanted to know where exactly is where I can find a lot of startups. So that is how I heard about Startup Grind, and I also met a chapter director based in Montreal, Cedric Tabo. Yeah, and he gave me a lot of insights about how it works, and yeah, that's how I got to know about Startup Grind.
Cool. Yeah, so when I found Startup Grind, it was years after I was in tech, and I wish I found it a lot earlier. I don't know, what. So
Yeah.
I'm jealous that you found Startup Grind so early in your career.
Yeah, the network, it's very Startup Grind actually adds a lot of value, and yeah, for me personally, I legit get a lot of value from Startup Grind content, and even by just subscribing to the newsletters, I get various products. Like recently I got where they app development and stuff like that, where company help. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, so I want to learn a little bit about you and your personal background. So with entrepreneurism, we all have different stories about how we found this niche that we're in, or just that, whether we're creative or a family background. So do you have your personal sort of story and journey that you share?
For sure. So when I was 15, I was involved with an NGO called Mani Themadathil, which helped the slums in Gujarat, and so it was an international NGO. So I was just volunteering there, and at that time there was this entrepreneur who came to volunteer, and he was pretty cool, and he was pretty wealthy and successful and stuff, and very knowledgeable person too. So I was talking to him and I asked him what he does, what do you do, sir, and all. And he gave me that first spark, I would say, in the startup world, the usually people even see you differently, So yeah, that's what got me into the startup world, and kind of got very curious about the whole industry. And in the university that I was in, there were a few startups, few guys they were working on their ideas, and I approached them. I reached out to them and I asked them if I could be part of them. Not I don't need to get paid or anything, just to get some experience. Not even the internship. I didn't get no certificates, nothing. Just to learn about it because I was curious, and I started working with a few startups. Then after that. After college, I went back to becoming a monk. I went to becoming a monk, and I wandered around Himalayas for about 2 years, and it wasn't that that great, because my own my teacher kind of committed suicide, and a lot of things happened, and then I wanted to really help animals, people that are suffering and stuff, because in the Himalayas it was I can be meditative there, but what about when I come back to the society? So that kind of made me like, realize that I should do something about it rather than just like, wandering around. So that's why I again came back and I started doing CFA. And when I started doing CFA, at that time also one of my classmate, he was working on a fintech startup, and so he offered me like, if I wanted to like, join him and start working on it. So that's when I really got into like, the startup, like really involved myself, and I dropped. I finished my first level of CFA, then I dropped off and I focused completely on it. Yeah, and worked on it. And because I was from a finance background, most of the time I was involved with startups in order to, and helping them raise funds. That was the main like, job of mine. Uh, and I started off with this startup, and like then after that I was involved with many startups where I was like not as a consultant or not advisor or anything, just as like, someone on their team to do the reach outs to investors and like, try to get a chance to pitch and so on. So during this time, I personally used pretty much most of the platforms out there, like AngelList, Crunchbase, like whatever I can to get a chance to pitch in front of the investors for these startups. But to be honest, like nothing really helped me out, and I spent countless hours just updating my profile on these things, and nothing really worked out. And I then there are crowdfunding platforms, right? And crowdfunding platforms actually do work. They do work like really well. A lot of startups raise funds through them, but like for me, for our startups, we didn't have enough money to do the marketing, because in crowdfunding you have to do your own marketing. You have to bring your own crowd. So basically, you will the crowdfunding platform, they verify your profile and stuff, and then they like, it's there, and you have to reach out to some like, good marketing people who can help you out with. And it costs like a lot, like 10-20K. Some of them charge it upfront, some of them charge like from the race as a part of commission. So we weren't able to afford that. So that didn't work. That was out of the question. And then the final attempt was reaching out to the investors. I created a long list of investors, went through them, cold email, one by one, one by one. And I don't know how I would have sent hundreds, like 200, 300, 400 emails, like just per startup, and nobody replied. Nobody replied. And I was like, wow, am I doing something wrong? Then, then that's when like, things, nothing worked. Then even I have like, reached out to like investors office to show up at their office and be like, can I meet this, or like, then I've even lied. I've done, yeah, I have an appointment. And they're like, no, you don't have an appointment. Yeah. I even went to like in India, in Delhi, a lot of angel investors, they have like big mansions and stuff, so it's easy to find them like an address. So I even like, went to the place, like give my number and my startup, like print out my pitch decks, and they give it to the security guard and stuff, and nothing really worked out. And the only thing, everything changed when I met one startup, like a startup founder, uh, from Kerala, the same place as me, and we kind of become friends. Like we spoke the same language, and he was pretty good. His startup was very good, and at that time he was involved. He was like really friendly with one VC named Innovate, based in New Delhi, and the investor's name is Ritesh Malik, and he's a fantastic person. I got a chance to talk to him because of this connection that I had, and it was easy. The moment I reached out, he was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll do the intro," and he did the intro. And Ritesh gave me like 10 minutes. He listened to my idea. At that time, my idea, I was working on something really stupid. It wasn't a great. It was like really wasn't. It was like planting power plants throughout desert or something like that. It was a crazy like idea, and but he did listen to me. He gave me 10 minutes time. He listened to me, and finally what he told me was like, okay, Mani, okay, you have to bring a prototype and I'll consider it. So I just got to know the power of that referral. It was
Mhm.
phenomenal. Like I just got the referral intro, and I got a chance to talk to that investor. And from that investor, I got like then from there I got connected with the other investors, and that's how I got to know like how to uh, really network and get a chance to pitch in front of investors.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's a tough journey, and like the and startup grind, when all of us chapter directors are tending to our flock of entrepreneurs, um, it's one of the most popular questions is like, how do I raise money? And it's really interesting the fever that people have for raising money when there's so few companies that actually need to raise money. Like certainly the best revenue comes from your customers, right? And
absolutely, absolutely. That's so
like,
true.
but of course there is a case for getting some funding, whether it's VC or angel or bank or whatever. And even banks, you have to have relationships. It's an amazing barrier to try to get over. So like when we talk about how much this process sucks, right? Like when you're a founder, why are some of the things that really make it suck for founders to fundraise?
First of all, I have my company and I want to work on my company. I want to spend most of the time on building it, growing it. When it comes to fundraising, when I decide, like for instance, from in my case, like I don't want to generalize, but personally for my case and the cases that I've seen, uh, when they want to raise funds, they invest. They had to invest at least like 80% of their time. It's like a full-time job for a founder to raise funds, and that is one of the main reasons why it sucks, because you're putting all your effort on reaching out, like networking or like going to events and stuff, and okay, so who's doing the development? Like unless if you have a development team, it's okay, but if you're like so you're the developer, you're doing the coding and stuff, then it needs a lot of resource, like a lot of time need to be allocated, and you have to like attend a lot of events, like startup events. And even if I've been to like countless startup events, and have I have networked with few, but not like it wasn't that effective. And a lot of the events are free nowadays, but like a lot of the events are paid as well, and the paid events are obviously a lot more effective, like because they have they put in the effort to bring in the crowd. Yeah, so that is why it's like it takes like a for like 12 months and over, it's like a very painful process where like you spend countless hours, money, effort to raise
Yeah.
funds. Yeah,
And then when you finally maybe raise, then you're working on raising your next round. So it's like it just doesn't stop.
oh yeah, so true, so true.
So in all your conversations with founders, like uh how many, like what percentage do you think like actually understand the fundraising process?
When it's pretty funny because early stage founders, they don't usually they don't even know who to reach out to. Like they don't know if they should go to angel investor or VC, or like they don't even know how much they want to raise, like a lot of the times. uh so yeah, yeah, of course, as founders, they struggle. Like I don't so as far as I know, about 80 to 90% of the startups, they don't even know who to pitch to, or they and I've met some really amazing companies, really great companies. And the founder, they themselves have they just say an amount they want to raise, like $800,000, and you ask them why, they don't even know where they want to spend it on. Like, so yeah,
Yeah.
so I would say like
That's
less than 10% knows it. Yeah.
that's a it's a pretty easy way to lose the attention of an investor if you finally get it, if you don't know the simplest things about your own business, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely.
no matter how good the idea is. So like,
Yeah, for sure.
um and also um so the founders who are watching, like it's no mystery on why fundraising sucks, right? We don't have to like necessarily beat that like dead, but um it also sucks for investors. Like, it's not easy for them either. Uh, and like, because investors are typically making maybe like one or two investments a year, right?
Mhm.
They might get pitched 1,600 opportunities a year, um, depending on who they are and how hungry they are. But they also are very busy doing other things. So they don't really have, like, not a lot of time is actually like able to be spent looking for really great companies. And so that's why it's so important. Like, well, how do they solve that problem? Like, what's you said that you've interviewed hundreds of investors.
Absolutely. Before I created intro, I didn't know when I knew the pain points of the of a startup, because I was founder as well. So, but I didn't know like why investors, like why is it too hard to reach out to them? Like why are they not responding? Are they not looking for funding? Are they not interested in investing? Like they're super rich. So it's like that's what I was thinking. Oh, they're rich, so they have the money, so they don't really care. They're not desperate, but what I understood is when I interviewed like a lot of investors, for instance, Francois Arber, based in Montreal, like he invested in over 60 plus companies, and when I interviewed when I talked to these kind of investors, what I understood is that there's a lot of startups out there, and they don't have a problem in getting deal flows. They can easily get deal flows if startups know that, hey, if an investor just posts like, hey, I want to like I'm investing, I'm looking for good opportunities, like this is my email address, they will get like hundreds of emails easily. But the thing is, a lot of the investors, like a lot of the angel investors, for instance, are super busy. They a lot of the times they have other business, like they're a lawyer or they're like a dentist or something, and so they don't have a lot of time to like go through startup pitch decks and but at the same time they do want to invest in good companies. They are desperate, they are looking for good deal flows, and VCs also, they are hunting for good deal flows, but most of their deal flows comes through referrals and connections. The reason why they don't really why they're not that open to the angel, like I mean cold reach outs, is that first of all, they don't know someone is reaching out, they don't know how good the startup is, but unless they spend time, they don't know if the startup is good or not. But a lot of the times, like they spend time and the startup is not good, they go through like 20-page pitch deck, and because they waste a lot of time. So that is why investors prefer to go through referrals and connections, or at least they wait until the startup blooms and the startup is kind of like marketing themselves, so the investors will find them, they will get to know them somehow, and they do the reach out. So that is how like investors find most of their deal flows, or else these angel investors, they become part of like angel groups, like Ange Quebec, like these kind of angel groups, and so the angel group will find deal flows for them, do all the process, and once a month or twice a month they have these meetings where the startups, selected startups get pitched, and they invest in that. So this is how they get.
Yeah, it's amazing how few startups actually get to be in front of an investor, right? And and that's even the startups that are within that particular investor's niche. Like, investors invest in what they know, right? Typically, so it's like you have to be the right company in the right industry at the right age of your company that they're interested in investing in. And then on top of that, like, you have to be approaching them when they're actually looking to deploy capital,
So true.
and maybe not just alone. Like, you have to catch them when 20 of them want to come in together, like at the
So
right
true.
time. And like,
So true. So
it's
true.
like such a the timing is incredible. And there's so many talks out there about like how much like luck is involved in success. And I don't know, like, one area where it's more important that you got someone on your team who's lucky. Someone you gotta like, cause like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That is why it's like it's pretty hard, because for instance, if you wanna raise funds from an angel group, for instance, you apply to the angel group, and the application process is like you have to spend like hours on it, and once you spend that, and they do the review and stuff, and they present it to the investors, it's very time consuming. On the other hand, but that is comparatively easier than us reaching out to the investors, because when we reach out to the investors, we don't know, first of all, a lot of the startups, when they reach out, they don't know if the investor, like what sector the investor invests in. So if I reach out to like if I'm in a fintech field, and I'm reaching out to a VC that invests in like agro based or something, like they're not even gonna consider it. But there's a rare chance that a lot of the times a lot of the VCs that I met, they have their personal fund on the side, like a small angel, personal fund outside the VC fund. And if they find some interesting ideas, they do invest in it, even if it's outside the VC portfolio. But that's very rare. So it is very important. What you said is like timing and the right person and being able to reach out at the right time when they're looking for funding. Yeah, that makes a lot of the difference, because or else you're definitely gonna get a no.
Right. Yeah. And the no's are wild because they come before anyone's even looked at a deck, right? Like investing is kind of like it's kind of like dating or something, because like within a few seconds whether you're interested or not. Like
Absolutely, absolutely. That is why I say like uh it's one of my pitch part of my pitch. Usually I say like startup fundraising itself is not hard. The hardest part is getting a chance to pitch in front of the right investors. And also, even if you pitch to like hundreds of investors, there's no guarantee that you're going to raise funds. But okay, so you don't lose anything, but at the same time what you lose is your time that you spend all this time pitching. So yeah.
yeah, it's
So
one of those things where like founders, when I speak with founders a lot, I have to really try to help them get their mind around the idea that some things we do regardless of the outcome, and we keep at it. Like you have to,
absolutely.
if you don't put so much stock in what you think success looks like, it'll probably come a lot faster that way, right? So like it's a numbers game is what a lot of people say, but even
Absolutely.
beyond that, just keep doing what you're doing, right? You
Absolutely.
got to keep putting yourself out there, and eventually you'll run into the right person. And that's maybe so what we've talked about before is what's the best way to 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 get to find someone that's going to be interested in listening to your pitch. What's the best way to raise funds?
I would say what worked for me is like, so what I did was I reached out to the investors. I did not when I was raising, but I did not tell them I was raising funds. First of all, I made sure that I was reaching out to the investors that actually invest in that specific field. Also, VCs, like there are some VCs, for instance, like Real Ventures in Canada, they invest in early stage startups too, or like accelerators. They also invest in startups as well. So first thing is to make sure that you're reaching out to the right person, like a right VC, or even before that, first need to understand, should I be reaching out to a VC or an angel investor? That is the first step. So once all these are cleared out, the best way is to reach out to a VC and ask for an advice, like ask for feedback on your product. Investors, if you reach out to them for their money, they're like there's like a barrier, like it's great psychology, like there's like, oh, he's coming for my money, so I have to be but when you reach out a VC without any strings attached, like just like do you mind giving feedback on this product? So they look at the product. When they look at the product, they know it. And if that product is interesting enough, then the VC will they themselves will initiate the conversation about the funding and stuff, for sure, because that has happened to me like a lot of the times, even for intro. Like I reached out to VC, like an angel investor, saying that, "Hey, could I get some advice about this product?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he looked at it and was like, "Oh, it's pretty interesting. Okay, do you want to jump on a call sometime?" And I was able to jump on a call the same week, yeah, with that angel investor. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of the best things about like even like an organization like Startup Grind is like we're a networking like organization. We're trying to like connect people,
Mhm.
and it's through those connections that give the most value, because it's not that person at the event that I'm chowing down pizza with, that might be in a position to invest in my company, but we're talking about like, okay, who are you? Where'd you come from? Tell me about your idea. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I know this guy over here who's investing right now, and you should totally meet him. I'll introduce you. And then you're just like, you weren't even trying to fundraise. Like,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
and
That happens a
like,
lot. Yeah.
um, as a ecosystem builder myself, because I'm a chapter director here, and I've got my flock of entrepreneurs that I tend to, I've been doing a lot of research on like what really moves the dial for people, and developing social capital. I learned from the USAID, like you're 7.5 times more likely to raise money if you're focused on networking and not raising money.
Absolutely.
Like, it's so weird. And um yeah, it's like building personal network is the number one, is it's the answer. It's like
E-
the path.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because a lot of the a lot of VCs that I reached out to, they say that like they said that, oh, I met this startup. I wasn't actually interested, but it came through a referral, so I had to like give time to that, give time and listen to that startup. So that means referral has a lot of power. And when you, as you said, like when you're at an event and you're talking to someone, you don't even know if that person might have like a lot of connections. So it's important to talk about your idea with a lot of people, and like network, and also like building a strong like LinkedIn profile, like a social media profile, like Twitter, being a lot active, because these VCs, when they get to know you, they also want to like, they might even go to your profile and check, and if you're active, you have that quality content that you're providing and stuff, and you have that credibility. And you have that credibility also, like investors will find you if you do that as well. Just on LinkedIn or Twitter, sharing content about your progress, and trying to draw in a lot of content, and that will help a lot. And as you said, social capital, that is very important. Networking is the thing that works, that works very well. And you get referrals and all these kind of things through networking only. So I would say, yeah, that is the number one
Between
thing.
the networking and making sure that everything's constantly updated, and keeping like
Hmm.
I like that you said that, because it speaks to that timing thing. Like we you have to make sure that the investor might have, it's like it's going to be a year before they're ready to make an investment, but they're watching, they're listening, right? And all that time they're also probably sharing it with colleagues, right? Being like, oh, like the next time that we're doing these things, we got to get this founder in our batch. Um, and the founder doesn't know that those conversations are happening until next
Not
year.
at all.
They're like, hey, are you still fundraising? So like, and when I learned about what you're working on, that's what like really like opened my eyes and got me excited, because you're building like a networking platform, not a fundraising platform, right? Like, I have all these entrepreneurs that are talking to me all the time, like, we're like, what platform do I use? I'm like, I'm platform agnostic. Like, I don't care if you use Republic or WeFunder or pitch to like this organization or that organization. Like, I don't care. Because just build network. But now, like, I'm excited to hear what you're working on. So like, yeah, can you tell us a little bit about intro? And I think we've learned maybe like how you kind of got to like creating it, but maybe give us a little bit of that story.
Absolutely. So uh, during this process, as I said, like I understood that fundraising itself is not hard. The hardest part is getting a chance to pitch in front of the right investors. And investors, like, it's easier when investors reach out to you than you reaching out to the investors. So that is the idea. Like I actually understood the pain points of a startup. Then I did like for the past 2 years, just interviewed hundreds of investors from Asia, from US, and from Canada, and from Europe, a lot from like in a Europe area and all. And with their help and guidance, I created intro. Basically, intro is something that they created, not I create. I didn't. It's not my idea at all. So basically, I interviewed them, and based on what they told me, like what they actually want, I created intro. So intro is like a invite-only video-based networking platform for startups to get visibility among multiple right investors, where investors will watch the 20 to 30-second startup pitch video. They get their traction details and market size and team details. And the investors, if they find any startup interesting, they just reach out to the startups directly. And yeah, so one of the benefit is that it takes like 2 minutes to onboard for a startup. It's like a breeze. And once they onboard, once they hit the publish, upload the video and hit the publish, we do the marketing. We send it to all the investors in our network, and our investors use a mobile application to view the pitch. So every time a startup onboards, we send them a notification like on their native app, like, hey, new startup. So the investors, like, take a look at the pitch, and if they're interested, they are the one reaching out to the startup, and startups are not the one reaching out. So basically, startup what a startup is doing is, like, presenting the idea in front of like hundreds of investors at a time, and letting whoever interested reach out to them. So here they will also know where they stand on an investor's perspective. Like, how does an investor see you? Like, so that is the benefit of Intra, and it's more like a networking platform. We don't do fundraising. We don't involve in the race itself. We just do the initial connection and networking, and help a startup build that quality connection that they can use. It doesn't matter if they're raising now or if they're raising in the future. At least they have that connection, so whenever they raise, that connection will come in handy.
Sure, yeah, because like you said, they're excited to hear about great ideas, whether or not the idea is raising right now. They just want to know about great ideas, right?
Absolutely.
And so, if I'm an investor, am I getting like, I don't want to see deals. I don't want to, like, I'm not in like a if I invest in tennis shoes, I don't want to see deals about, like, coffee. Like, are the investors, like, are you showing every investor every deal, trying to like tap into their network, or how does that work?
So yeah, great. So about that, as I mentioned, it's invite only. So we do make sure that the startups that we give access to, like, because not any random startup can just go and, like, log in and upload. First, we like, we make sure the startup is, like, like, we just have a half an hour call, and we make sure the startup is serious. They're not gonna quit like the second day after uploading a pitch. So we make sure about that kind of stuff. And like the basic validating. But at the end of the day, we believe that investors qualify to judge whether a startup is investable or not. For instance, Airbnb or Honey, they pitched to like 200 plus startups, investors, and finally they raised 1.8 million. And in 2018, they exited for like 4 billion. So a lot of investors, hundreds of investors said no.
Said
Then
no.
finally some investor came and they invested. So like that also happened. So we don't really judge a startup, but at the same time we just make sure that they actually have a product, and they're actually working on it.
Right.
So we do vet the startup, yeah, at the minimum, yeah.
Yeah, so like for the founders, I'm a multiple time founder. I've used all the platforms that you talked about. I've spent so much money on events and stuff. So like, and I don't know why everyone feels like founders have all this cash to spend on fundraising. So like, how does Intro make money?
Oh, so that is another thing. As I said, the benefit of doing this 2 years research is that the business model, also the way we build it's all like it doesn't make sense charging a startup. They don't have money. That's why they're trying to raise money so that they can survive, do business. So charging them like $10 or $9 or like a processing fees, no, we don't do that. The invitation itself is the cost. As I mentioned, we make sure that the startup, like, minimum, they do the minimum qualification, right? We make sure the startup is good. So that itself is the cost. Like, we don't charge startups anything, but investors do pay us. We don't take part in the commission, success rate, or any such thing. We just charge $149 per month, like from an investor, or $1,269. And on our network, we have a lot of investors promoting their own portfolio companies as well, which is a value add for investors. Like, for instance, an investor that is using the app, he invested in like maybe 20 companies, and some of the companies, they are raising their seed round. Then they want to promote that startup in front of other investors. So a lot of startups get promoted that way as well. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
that's
our business model is pretty simple. We charge investors, not startups.
Yeah, so like, one of the frustrating things about like finding investors is that there's a lot of investors that like they just don't invest alone. Like they're they're not going to look at your company because they're like, yeah, like I invest with like 10 friends, and if they're not investing, like we just
Mhm.
yeah. So you're like they're interested in like that's the timing was right, the idea is right, the industry is right, but then they're like, no, I'm not interested in your company because like you don't have any other people investing in you.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
just-
absolutely.
um, cool. Well, that's really neat. And so what stage like what stage are you in right now with intro? Because you're a startup too, right?
Yeah, I'm a startup too. So we are at the stage of growth, and currently, like, we're driving a lot of startups, and we're doing the intro with the investors. Like intro, as I said, like we do the introduction to the investors. So currently, we are at the growth stage. We're getting a lot of reaction, and a lot of investors are using it because they created. So a lot of investors that helped me create this app were the first adopters, and like they started using it, and they liked it, and they started inviting other investors. So it's the network, the group is kind of growing. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy the way it is going right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, like, how do investors and how do startups like learn more or find you?
Absolutely. So they can just reach out, like they can either book a call on the website, ideaintro.com, or they can actually send me an email at manny at ideaintro.in. So either way, or else they can find me on LinkedIn as well, Mani Themadathil. So yeah, either way, yeah, for sure, they can
What kind
find
of
me.
startups and investors are that you want reaching out to you?
So the type of startups that I'm looking at are like pre-seed to Series A. We do that, like, because past Series A they don't need, even Series A they don't really need help. Like the most recently, I that's pretty rare that a startup reached out and they were raising $175 million, and they already raised 125 million, and they're raising 50 million. So that startup is onboarding. That is rare. So that is like super rare. Yeah, so that rarely happens. So we are looking for startups pre-seed and Series A between this.
Hmm. On
Yeah,
the investor
and
side, like same thing.
investor side, like angel investors and VCs, like we look for like a really credible investors and active investors, basically, because the type of investors that we have so far are like really high quality investors. Like some of the investors, the angel investors, the minimum check size they write is like $500,000 to $2 million.
Oh
So
wow.
like high quality investors. So yeah, but and also on the group, investors can connect with each other and co-invest as well. So that is another plus point. So that is a value add as well for an investor to join intro.
Sweet, great. Well, thanks very much for your time. It was really great getting to know you. I know that we talked about some of your personal experience as a founder, and I might be interested in reaching out a little bit later and talking with you again about some of your early like founder experiences. But really appreciate all of the advice and information today.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me here. And before I go, just one last thing, as a startup, one thing I found is that when you find your advisor, or advisor like a business coaches, please do make sure, like, this for the startups, because I've faced, like, I lost a lot of money, like which like hiring the wrong advisor, or like the wrong, like, business coaches and stuff. So that is very important. That's the only thing that I want to give, apart from fundraising.
Yeah, you've got to be really careful with your money, right? Because
Very careful.
so
Everybody wants your money. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
all right. Good to see you, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Corey.